Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this Patreon bonus content episode for April 9th, 2023. I am JD Duran, and I am joined by the lovely, the great Christian Eulenberg. Christian, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hey! It's good to see you. Always
nice to
glad.
see you too, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Always glad to have you here as part of these conversations. This is also interesting because we're doing this on Patreon. First of all, thank you to our lovely patrons. And if you, as you all know, if you're patrons, you get early access to these episodes. This will be released a few days after the early access period is up over at patreon.com/InSessionFilm. So if you're watching this, listening to this after it's released to the public, welcome to you all as well. But yeah, if you sign up over at patreon.com/InSessionFilm, you get early access to these bonus content episodes. So definitely go and check that out. But this is my first podcast, at least in session film related, since the birth of my second son. So this is a little bit of a milestone. The wife has let me do this. She is holding down the fort with not one but two kids now.
Nice. I think that deserves a little celebration.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you to my lovely wife. But yeah, this is technically my second podcast. I actually did a guest episode a week ago, which was a lot of fun. But this is my first In Session Film podcast since Andrew was born, which was March 15th. So it's been almost a month now. It's been quite the whirlwind, but it's been great. It's been lovely. I love being a dad of two. And so things are good. I'm hoping to come back to the show, maybe not full time, but I'll come back next month in some sort of capacity. So you'll see me more on the main show. I'll come back for some reviews here and there. So you can see me more, or you will be seeing me more on the In Session Film side of things. But we're starting things off here on this Patreon bonus content episode, talking about Star Wars Celebration, which just happened over the weekend. And there was a lot to talk about. So before we get into it, again, Christian, thank you for being here. How you doing? Holding up fine?
I'm doing good. Again, thank you so much for having me. It's been crazy on my side. No children on my side.
Not
but that's not something I can necessarily top. But I'm getting ready to move. Music City can be very expensive. You gotta take while the taking is good. So they say when it comes to living arrangements.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, I've been great. Watching a lot of movies. I finished Beef today on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm excited to start that. Yeah,
very good. I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Episodes aren't super long either. They're like 30-35 minutes around there.
Nice.
So, but yeah, outside of that, just been working and living the dream.
Yeah, love to hear it. Well, thanks again for being here. I am excited to dive into this, and I want to start here. Let's circle back, Christian, to 2018. And for context for yourself and also for many listeners or viewers out there, if you're watching this on YouTube, on episode 275, it felt like forever ago that we did this exercise. We did our top 3 Star Wars spinoffs that we wanted to see. And at that time, let's keep in mind, at that time, the only spinoffs we had seen was Rogue One and the Solo film that did not do all that great.
Right.
Now, we knew that the Rise of Skywalker was on the horizon, but as far as Star Wars content goes, we had the sequel trilogy, what was happening, and those 2 spinoff movies. Aside from that, we weren't sure what the future of Star Wars held, which made that exercise really fun and interesting for us to talk about the expanded universe and where we thought things were going to go. Now, obviously, since The Rise of Skywalker, we've seen a slew of other Star Wars content and all of the shows now on Disney Plus, and we haven't seen a film since Rise of Skywalker. So back on episode 275, this was true fantasy, thinking outside the box. What do we want to see? Which is fascinating because on my list at number 2, I want to see live action Ahsoka Tano, or I at least wanted to see a film as something dedicated to her specifically because she's one of the best Star Wars characters, period. Full stop. She's absolutely incredible. I love Ahsoka Tano. Also on my list, I noted that I wanted to see exploration of the Jedi and Sith and the Force during the Old Republic. So 2 of my 3, again, this was 2018, episode 275. 2 of those 3 are now happening thanks to what we heard at Star Wars Celebration. Now, Ahsoka Tano, like that show, Ahsoka, we knew was coming.
Yeah.
So that wasn't news per se, but we did get to see a trailer. We'll talk about that here in a second. And then, of course, there's the announcement of the James Mangold film, which we'll also get to here in a little bit. So it's kind of interesting to me that 5 years later, after having no indication that these things were actually going to happen, and I sent out a tweet actually before we got started here, Christian, that when I did that list, while I was anxious to see those things come to fruition, I was quite dubious that that would never happen, or at least it would take a long, long time for those things to develop. I'm not sure if I foresaw that in 2023 those things would be happening. So it's very exciting to me anyway that we're finally getting this content. And let's start with the Ahsoka trailer.
Yeah.
First of all, I guess give us some background, some context on how you feel about Ahsoka, and what did you think about that trailer?
Oh, well, Ahsoka Tano is by far like in my like top 3 characters of all time.
Yeah.
Of
Which
Star
by the way,
Wars.
that's the reason Christian is here. If he wasn't a fan, I would have kicked him out a long time ago.
And
Just kidding.
no, you're totally fine. I mean, I've been watching. I mean, you know, I've been a Star Wars fan for a very long time. But when Clone Wars first hit Cartoon Network, for those who remember the old days,
Yeah.
you know, when Ahsoka was first introduced, it was technically a TV movie. It was really just like a few episodes of Clone Wars stitched together, where you know she's running around saying "Sky Guy, Sky Guy," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay."
It
But,
wasn't
like,
great at the beginning.
It wasn't great, but I mean that Ahsoka is Dave Filoni's baby, and
Yeah.
like I said, she's one of my like in my top 3. Like she's actually probably like my number 2 favorite. It goes between her and Anakin for the number 1 spot like all the time.
She's
But
top
when-
3 for me as well.
Yeah,
I love her.
It's fantastic, and like you know, I've always wanted to see Ahsoka in live action because you know she's in Clone Wars and she's also in Rebels, and you know that was a great surprise there. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know the love for Ahsoka is just keeps growing and growing, and I love it because she is a well written character, just through and through. And when I saw the trailer for the teaser trailer for Ahsoka, I think it's hitting Disney Plus in the summer, August.
Yes,
and
my
I
birthday. It's coming out around my birthday, Christian. They tailor-made this for me.
Well, they tailor made it for me as well because Rosario Dawson and I share a birthday. So
okay.
Yes, I'm very excited. But the trailer looked amazing. You know, getting to see a lot of the Rebel characters in live action as well, especially with like Sabine. It looks great. And I'm like, this is something that I've been wanting for a long time. I think I'm one of the Star Wars fans that's been fine with them kind of taking a break from movies altogether. I do think it's a bit odd that Disney, you know, they're like, oh, we don't want another you know, another situation like Solo. And I'm like, well, Rise of Skywalker is like right there. But I
Yeah.
digress. I'm very excited for the Ahsoka trailer. I watched it at least like 5 times because I can't get enough of it. And I'm like, I could not think of anyone else better than Rosario Dawson to play Ahsoka, especially after we've seen her in The Mandalorian season 2. Like that first episode, I was like, I wonder how well she's gonna do. And then she just blew me away. I was like, yes, 100%. I'm on board.
Yeah, no, I'm wholeheartedly there with you. I've seen some cynicism around this trailer, and I struggle to fathom. And again, it's just a trailer. The final product might not be all that good. I don't really know.
We could get another book of Boba Fett.
Exactly. And who knows? Ahsoka may turn out to be that level of quality. Who knows? It's hard to say.
But we'll see.
We'll see. But when I look at this trailer, not just content wise or character wise, just looking at it visually, I struggle to fathom the cynicism. It is anything but the murkiness of something like the live action Disney films that they've been doing, of like redoing their animated films, or even the murkiness and the CGI echo chamber that is the MCU. Looking at this film visually, to me, it is a far cry from that kind of stuff. So some of the cynicism I've seen around the trailer in that regard blows my mind. I think we've gotten to a point where the discourse has fed everyone's either cynicism or optimism to such an extreme that we now just cling to these extremes regardless, and we can't find any sort of middle ground. That's what it seems like to me, because I struggle, especially when you see the discourse around Disney or whatever studio, and just kind of the visual grayness that has driven a lot of that discourse. And I understand it, even if I'm not wholly on board with it at times, depending on the project and what it's attempting to do. Sometimes I think that discourse is maybe a little overbearing and myopic, but oftentimes it's warranted. And I do understand where people are coming from, but that doesn't mean like everything Disney does or everything Star Wars does is going to fall under that same umbrella, because the visual prowess of this trailer, and again, just the trailer, it's a far cry from something like Quantumania, for example, and the criticisms that were lofted at that movie. Also, I think the trailer on its own, I just think is very exciting. It has a pulsating energy to it that's really great. And granted, some of its more geeky moments does come through, and it's nostalgia and references to other pieces of lore or other characters that we do love. So granted, if you haven't seen any of the Filoniverse, then yeah, this trailer might evoke an emptiness in you. And I certainly understand that.
Yeah.
But Ahsoka is a character that is built in the Filoniverse. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this show on the whole pandering to that. I don't think this is a show that is created for the broad Star Wars fan, if that makes sense. Now, broader Star Wars fans that have no connection to these characters, hopefully they'll still be able to enjoy it.
Right.
But this trailer, and by proxy the show on the whole, I am going to assume anyway, for better or worse there, is going to, I think, pander to the Filoniverse.
Yeah.
Because what we see a lot of in this trailer is not only Ahsoka, but we are getting live action versions of all of the main characters from Rebels is going to be in here, and we see them in this trailer, which we can certainly get into. There's, of course, Grand Admiral Thrawn is going to be in this. Lars Mikkelsen reprising that role, which is all that got me very excited. If you haven't seen Rebels, you need to go watch it. It's really, really good. And Thrawn in that show was one of its highlights for sure, as well as Ahsoka and her inclusion there.
Oh yeah.
So, the way this show seems to kind of be tethering, crystallizing certain arcs from Rebels that are continuing into this era of Star Wars and where Ahsoka finds herself now, as, the rebellion is starting to form. This seems to have a lot of great things written all over it, and I could not be more excited. I watched that trailer at least 60 times, and I got
so
giddy every
good.
time.
Yeah.
I got giddy every time.
I mean, it's Rebels, for me, obviously Clone Wars holds like a little bit more special place in my heart, but I still really enjoyed Rebels, and I kind of want to go through a rewatch of Rebels because this is catering to both Clone War fans, for people obviously where Ahsoka was first introduced, and Rebels fans. So it's like she's so important, and I've always described her as like Anakin's like North Star in a way, when it comes to their relationship and how complicated that is. But I do agree, when it comes to like cynicism online, I mean, like Star Wars fans are going to be Star Wars fans. Nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. But, I think there's a right way to be like, you know what, this doesn't really do it for me. Like you said, if you're not a fan of Rebels or the Clone Wars series, it's probably not going to do too much for you because Ahsoka has been such a big character, but this is like her first real, her own series stepping into live action. Like we've seen her in The Mandalorian, but outside of that, she's always been animated. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when it comes to live action for Ahsoka fans, that's such a big deal. And, we haven't seen her in a movie just yet. I'm hoping at some points that we will, but I think with this show, I feel happy and grateful, to be alive during this time, being a Star Wars fan, because sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what you're tapping into, and there's a couple of things that we also haven't mentioned yet that I think we need to get into that makes this really exciting. Aside from us getting to explore Ahsoka further, that in and of itself, I am excited for. Rosario Dawson, I'm with you. I thought she was very good in the few glimpses we've seen of her in the live action version of the character. It was also noted at Star Wars Celebration that she did something like 14 hours of training a week to mimic the stunt work that is done in the TV show. So that way, when we see it in live action, while it won't be verbatim, it'll feel close enough that we're watching the same character.
Right.
And that to me is exciting. So like they're really dedicating themselves to this character to get it right, physically and otherwise. In storytelling wise, I just don't doubt Dave Filoni at this point.
Not at
so
all.
I assume that the show will be, it's in good hands in that regard. And it is exciting to hear Dawson kind of putting into work to honor the animated version of Ahsoka that we all know and love, which is maybe why some people are dubious about this. And are they going to get it right? Well, here's a piece of information that seems to suggest they are at least doing their damnedest to get it right. The other thing too is this, right? So there's been a lot of debate over, I'm tired of the same old Star Wars, but also, we love characters like Vader. Now, Anakin is critical to Ahsoka's story, right? And for anyone that isn't familiar with Ahsoka, please go watch her in Clone Wars, watch her in Rebels. You'll see the relationship between her and Anakin. So Hayden Christensen coming back as Anakin in this series, whatever that looks like, I think is very exciting, especially given the last time those two were together, when she realized who Vader is, that was left on a kind of ambiguous note that I assume that this is going to get a little bit further into. So him coming into the show, and okay, yes, we've seen Darth Vader plenty over the years, but I think bringing in Hayden Christensen as Vader, not only does it offer up a little bit of nostalgia to this for the old school Star Wars fans, but this is one of those situations where it's appropriate because Vader is critical, it's crucial to the central character of it's titled Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And those two are peanut butter and jelly. They are necessary to each other. The other thing too, we are going to get what a lot of people have been harping for a long time. Let's get new stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's enter in Ray Stevenson as Baylan Skoll, who is a former Jedi, I believe, who survived Order 66, but now he's into the unknown regions and seems to have his own little Jedi clan that has like these orange-ish lightsabers that we have not seen before.
Yeah.
So we're going to see a clan of, I don't know if they're Jedi, I don't know if they're Sith, they're probably somewhere in the middle, but we're going to see lightsaber wielding people, warriors, that are new to the Star Wars universe. So to me, that's exciting. This is a show that is going to have the familiar, going old school with even bringing in Vader, but is also going to give us a lot of new stuff and exploring even the Rebels characters further, introducing them to a whole new audience as well, and expanding on where we left them in Rebels, which was also a little bit ambiguous. So to me, this seems to have it all. It's going to have the animated fans. By that, I mean fans of the animated shows, Rebels and Clone Wars. You got the Vader fans. You got those in the Star Wars universe that want to see new things. This is covering all of that in a way that to me feels appropriate, that feels necessary for a series like this. And to me, that has me through the roof excited. I don't know how anyone that is a fan of Star Wars can look at that and go, no, pass.
Exactly. It's like this show sounds like a dream come true. You know, when you're introducing new elements, and we know when it comes to Star Wars, like you said, you know, it seems that there are some old school Star Wars fans that want to keep things the same, but in order for a franchise to grow and to, you know, reach new heights and to evolve, you have to introduce new elements, or else it's just the same old thing over and over and over. You know, you can say, oh, you know, Mario, whatever, that's a video game kind of thing, but with a franchise like this, you know, they're working on expanding the universe. So let's expand into new territory. Let's expand into new characters and into new stories, whether that's, you know, the prequel to the Skywalker saga or after, and kind of just moving away from the whole, you know, Luke and Leia and Han Solo bit of it. And let's go explore new worlds. But this show sounds like a dream come true. I'm so excited. You know, I'm glad it's not coming till August, so we have some time to prepare, because I was like, I swear if this drops like June or July, I'm going to lose it, because there's so many movies coming out. And but like TV is like my bread and butter. It's like my pacifier. I absolutely love it. So I'm like, I want to be prepared to watch it. I need to at least watch, maybe like rewatch the last season of Rebels altogether, just to save some time. But and maybe even the last season of Clone Wars episode or season 7, because that was phenomenal as well. But I can't imagine a Star Wars fan saying, no, you know, like, this isn't for me. I mean, there probably are some out there, but it's like, how could you not get excited about this? Like, granted, we haven't seen anything, so let's, you know, reserve some judgment, but let's wait until the series is finished before we kind of, you know, presume, like, because there was a lot of craziness going on with the Obi-Wan show that happens. And I was like, let's wait until the end, because, you know, it is a series, and let's, you know, give it a fair watch before, you know, analyzing it in that kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely. And another arm that we could mention regarding the Star Wars universe, and we already mentioned Thrawn, but he comes from the old expanded universe that is no longer canon. And there's a sect of Star Wars fans that want to see that material become fully realized in the canon verse, this new canon verse of Star Wars. So Thrawn being in the mix more. Now, he was introduced in Rebels, so they did bring him into the canonized version of Star Wars that we know it to be today, but they're going to bring him in live action for the first time. So again, we're getting all of these extensions of the Star Wars verse that I think is really great. And you know, you were mentioning Rebels there a little bit. I do want to talk about that a little bit further, because Rebels, I think, is some of the best Star Wars we've seen. There's less seasons of it compared to Clone Wars. Clone Wars, I think, is really great. Maybe a little bit more uneven on the whole compared to Rebels, maybe as a result of it having 14 seasons or something like that.
Yeah, it's 7 seasons for Clone Wars, and I think Rebels has 3 or 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Something
My
like
math was
that.
way off, but my point stands.
Right.
Rebels, was half the length of Clone Wars. And Clone Wars was great. Don't get me wrong. I really liked it a lot. I think Rebels had a little bit more consistency. I think it knew exactly where it wanted to end. Where it started, and at the beginning of it, I think it knew what its end goal was going to be.
Yeah.
And that could have been because of Filoni's, and I'm trying to remember, there might be actual interviews where Filoni talks about this, because of what happened with Clone Wars. That show never got to materialize the way it wanted to originally, right? Because the last season was cut short. It only had 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So there was a lot that was left on the cutting room floor. They just never got a chance to realize until during the pandemic. I think Filoni got the green light to kind of release those last few episodes. It was a 4-episode ending to Clone Wars, and Ahsoka is a big part of that, right? Where her and Rex are together, and you see how Rex gets his chip taken out by Ahsoka, and that whole storyline is really fantastic. So Filoni finally did get to crystallize the Clone Wars in what I thought was an artistically beautiful way, actually. But at the time, it was just one of those things where Lucasfilm was like, nope, we're done here.
Yeah.
You guys,
I
you guys are
remember
done.
that. Yeah.
And so I think as a result, when Filoni went into Rebels, he's like, we're going to avoid this. We're going to just do 3 seasons or whatever it was, 3 or 4 seasons, and then we'll be done with it. So that way we don't run into that problem again. And so as a result, I think Rebels is a little bit more seamless in its storytelling comparatively.
It trims the fat for sure, because there are a lot of filler episodes in Clone Wars, which are good, but Yeah,
for sure. And certainly you get some of that in Rebels, but less so. And the characters to me are just so fully realized. I'm so excited to see Sabine Wren, who we get prominently in this trailer. I'm excited to see more of that character. She's one of the first Mandalorian characters we really get to know in a deep way. Because Boba Fett and that original trilogy is a nothing character. To me, it's always been ironic and hilarious that he's become so iconic in a way. And perhaps it's just a byproduct of the Mandalorian armor and the culture and everything that comes with Mandalore, which isn't really explored, obviously, in that original trilogy at all. Boba Fett just has this cool aesthetic to him. But he's a nothing character, which is
literally
so
it's
hilarious.
nothing. And everyone's like, what happened to him when he found the Sarlacc pit? And I was like, who cares? And then we got a show, and I was like,
and then he got his own show, which was not great either. So Boba Fett has just had a rough history. But Sabine is really the first Mandalorian we get to know in a real, true, profound way that I think is really great. And then of course the Mandalorian, the TV show that is, with Jin, that takes it to a whole new level. Where some of the characters from Rebels even shows up in the Mandalorian as well.
Yes.
So so to me, it's a, I've loved all of that. Say what you will about this last season of The Mandalorian, which has been uneven, but I've still enjoyed it for the most part. But Sabine Wren, I think, is one of the best Star Wars characters as well. And then we're going to get
Absolutely.
live action Ezra Bridger here. And I'm curious what that's going to be like. I don't know much about Iman Esfandi. I'm probably butchering that name.
I
Please
think that's how
forgive
you
me.
pronounce it. Like, yeah.
I don't know much about him, but I'm very excited to see live action Ezra. And given where things left off with him and Thrawn, there's a lot of ambiguity there. I'm so excited to see what Filoni is
Yeah,
going
I'm
to
very
do with those
excited.
characters in the context of Ahsoka and where she's at, how she's involved, and all of that. And then we're going to get General Syndulla, more of her as well in live action with Mary Elizabeth Winstead there as Hera. So yeah, I mean, and also I'm curious if her son is going to be a part of this. I'm not sure if that was announced or not.
I can't remember. I don't know.
I'd have to look into that. But to
Yeah.
see these characters come back, and Chopper, how could you?
Yeah,
forget Chopper?
exactly. No, seriously, like, yeah, like when I first started watching Rebels, like, I mean, it was a turn off just because I was like, okay, this is on Disney XD. I didn't like the toothpick lightsabers, but I still watched it because it was Star Wars, and I ended up enjoying it like quite a lot. And I'm like, oh, like this, like I really do enjoy this. Like, you get used to the animation after a while. And I know a
You
lot
do,
of people, especially with like early Clone Wars, yeah, you can definitely see the production value getting like better and better with each season. But if you watch like that Clone Wars movie, you're gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh wow, this looks rough, but it's not super terrible. But yeah, it's
Sure.
like, yeah, but I
Yeah.
totally agree. Like,
Yeah.
it's great.
It is great. I really do love Rebels. Yeah, you somewhat have to get used to its animation style, or perhaps its I guess it's childish energy at times, because it was a show on Disney XD. So you have to kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
get accustomed to it. But for a show on Disney XD that in many respects is pandering to children, I also think it's very mature for a show that is doing that.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
a lot of Star Warsy things that are happening that will certainly like go above children's heads that are watching. Like my son Sam, for example, who's 7, he would be the target audience for a show like that on Disney XD. There's a lot of stuff in that show that I would have to sit down and explain to him, especially what we see with Vader. Like, they bring in Darth Vader into that show in a significant way, again, a way
was
that
a
makes sense.
Killer episode. And I
Oh my gosh,
cried.
it's so
Cried.
good.
Yes.
There's a lot of mysticism to Rebels. There's a whole through line where time is a factor. In terms of the lore of Star Wars, it expands to, these areas that we just haven't seen before that are going to be cumbersome for 7-year-olds like my son. So despite where that show was released, I think it did a really great job of giving kids what they want in terms of the fun, but also giving the adults who are watching it with their children the stuff they love about Star Wars. And so it is more mature than anything else you'll see on that channel. That is for sure. And the
That is very
characters are
true.
fully realized. The characters are fully realized. They're done very well, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm excited for all of them. I also just want to mention, because we listed all of the main characters except 2, Kanan being one of the more significant ones for spoiler
Yes.
reasons. And in case people listening, watching this haven't seen Rebels, I guess I won't reveal what that is, but we won't be seeing him in Ahsoka. And then the other one is Zeb, who I don't know if he's going to show up in Ahsoka, but did you see him in The Mandalorian?
I did.
Last week?
I freaked. I was like,
That was pretty
"Is
cool.
oh my! I was like, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, such a nice little just pass through. Like, he had
Yeah.
a few lines, but he looked great. Like the CGI.
He
on
looked
Zeb
very
was-
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was like,
what-
wow.
And my initial thought was that he was just of the same species. I didn't think that it would be Zeb right away, but then you hear him speak, and it's the same actor. It's Stephen Blum, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
that is 100% Zeb.
Yeah.
It's like, that is so cool.
I agree.
So
That
we
was-
know he's out there, so he certainly could end up being a part of this show or have a cameo, or who knows. But I love the Zeb as well.
Mm.
Anyway, long story short, Rebels is awesome. Please go watch it if you get a chance. But to have all of them in live action form assist Ahsoka on her journey, I just think is going to be great. And Hayden Christensen coming back, he was one of the best things, if not the best thing, about the Obi-Wan show last summer. And then I cannot reiterate enough how awesome I think the Ray Stevenson part of this is going to be, to have new characters that we don't know, that are going to be expanding this universe in a fascinating way with Thrawn, because they're allies. Ray Stevenson's character and Thrawn are going to be some sort of allies to each other. So much about this show on paper, anyway, I think is extremely exhilarating.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
trailer to me looks immensely promising. So
Mhm.
I cannot wait. Cannot
Same.
wait for Ahsoka. So the next thing we should talk about is this new James Mangold film that's coming out. And again, this is something I somewhat teased earlier, because we've all wanted to see something from the Old Republic. And we're finally going to be diving into that era. I don't know if this is going to have some sort of title regarding the Old Republic, but it's going to be that era, and it's going to be the dawn of the Jedi Force. I think they articulated it by saying this is going to be about the first Jedis to use the Force. So yeah, I think a lot that we're
Yeah.
excited for here,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's James Mangold. So what do you think, Christian?
I'm very excited. I've played a lot of video games in my day. So those who have played Knights of the Old Republic, KOTOR, 1
There you
and
go.
2, that is definitely in the realm of like predating like the Phantom Menace, and where they were just a bunch of like Jedi and Sith running around, and it's
Yeah.
fun and exciting to finally see that Star Wars is moving away from the Skywalker saga, as I said before, and I want to see like the origins play out on screen, because I just want to see
Yeah.
a bunch of Jedis and Sith running around hacking up each other, because to me at least that is the whole the fantasy aspects of Star Wars, because I've always
Yeah.
viewed it as a fantasy series, more so than a sci-fi series, more so just because of the Jedi. It's just that the whole Jedi Sith relationship and the origins, that's really like the most exciting part of Star Wars to me. But I'm very excited for this prequel, whatever the movie is, because like you said, we haven't had a movie since Ahsoka series. That's a TV show.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this will be the next movie, but there's also
Yeah,
we'll talk
there's
about
a
the
few
other
we're going to get to. I don't know if
Yeah.
they've given release dates or
Release dates or,
timelines or
yeah,
anything. We don't
timelines.
know, but
But yeah, this being one of the first Star Wars movies we had in almost how many years? 6, 7,
Was it 2019? Was that Rise?
19, 20.
So yeah,
So it's been about 4 or 5-ish years, about 5 years.
yeah, because one has to assume it's not coming out next year, unless they
Right.
start shooting tomorrow, which I don't think is happening.
Kyle's like,
So-
we're gonna get on it right away.
One has to assume 2025 at the earliest, and at
Yeah.
that point, it would be 6 years.
About 6 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point, or a good chunk of time to kind of cool down, because I feel like if Solo performed better in the box office, we would have had like a Star Wars movie like
Oh my gosh,
every single year, and it
Yeah.
it kind of ruins the magic.
would have been very
Um,
different story.
Yeah, like TV I'm fine with, but it's like, yeah, when we can finally get back into the theater and watch a Star Wars movie, I'm very excited for this, just for the fact that what it's covering when it comes to the origins of the Jedi. And I believe they said it was gonna have some type of biblical, I guess, a reference or tale. I mean, Star Wars, it's highly based off like
Mhm.
Christianity and whatnot when it comes to Jedi and the Sith, at least the original trilogy was. But yeah, I'm very excited
Yeah.
for it altogether. And I believe the director of this is also directing the new Indiana Jones movie, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So I'm very that has me more excited. Like they're like, hey, let's just keep the Lucas train thing running with
Mhm.
something different.
Before I get into this, just to reiterate, because I looked it up out of curiosity as you were talking there, Solo only grossed 392 million worldwide. That is so little
That's
comparatively
low
to
for a Disney property.
for a Star Wars product,
Yeah.
especially by today's standards, right? I mean, Avatar, Mario Brothers did that this weekend, like these last
Dude,
5
Mario
days.
Brothers is cleaning house.
Cleaning
Yeah.
house. So
But yeah,
Yeah.
like Solo's not even that bad of a movie. But
I mean,
it just,
I don't love it. I think
it's
what
not my favorite.
I'm more saddened by the through lines that we see at the end of that film that never came to fruition, because again, tailoring back to previous discussion about Star Wars, like the Clone Wars TV show, what they promise at the end of that film regarding a certain character, I don't know if it's spoilers by now. I mean, the film came out 5
It definitely
years ago.
is. That movie came out ages ago.
I mean, so when you get to the tease that we get at the end, which has a massive spoiler to Clone Wars, I mean that to me was very exciting, because that
It
was the
was.
first time that they had merged the live action characters and the animated characters. They were finally fusing together.
Yeah.
The Filoniverse really started then and has really been more prominent the last few years. But it started then, but because Solo it grossed not even $400 million, like, nope, no more. And I was like, oh man, but that was going to be exciting. I didn't love
Yeah.
Solo, but what it was going to churn on further had me actually quite excited. So
Same. Yeah. I wasn't Solo's
it's,
not the best.
it is what it is.
but it's
At any
fine.
rate.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to take us down one of those rabbit holes, but
No,
to
it's all good.
the
It's
James,
relatable enough.
it is. The James Mangold film I'm looking forward to, because yes, for all the reasons that you're talking about, it's going to get into an era of Star Wars that, at least in the film verse and really in any visual medium, we haven't really seen yet. So to go back to the Old Republic, the beginnings of the Force, that's something that has been on my radar for a long time. That's been on a lot of Star Wars fans' radar for a long time. That's why I brought it up on episode 275. And then also, James Mangold is a director that I find fascinating. He's had a really interesting career, because he's directed movies such as Girl Interrupted and Kate and Leopold, which, say what you will about those films, but then you look at the back half of his career and what is he known for? The Wolverine, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, Indiana Jones now. Like, it's such a far
Ford v
cry from his early
Ferrari,
work.
Yeah.
But he also did Walk the Line. I don't love that film, but that's more of a script writing thing, not a direction thing. And he did have a hand in the script. So James Mangold, the writer, I don't love there, but James Mangold, the director of Walk the Line, I think shows some vision. Same thing in 310 to Yuma. I think there's some really fascinating visual cues to that film. I don't love the Wolverine, but some interesting touches from a direction standpoint there. Logan is really where James Mangold comes into the
Shines
fold
through.
in a new and invigorating way that I think that continued on even with Ford v Ferrari, which is a film that I
agree.
also really like. And I think his direction in that film is also quite good. And, it's hard to say with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny quite yet. The trailer looks pretty promising. Visually speaking, it's hard for me to fully say. I can't go full cinephile, as some have to go, oh my God, this is going to be one of the best blockbuster. Visually, it has that Disney sheen to it. So I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to say.
They're masking it.
I will. I think James Mangold, though, is on a hot streak right now
I agree.
And that has me more excited for Indiana Jones more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, right now he's doing a lot of really great things as a filmmaker, and having him now jump from Indiana Jones to Star Wars, especially if Indiana Jones does great, if it actually is very, very good, and I am excited for it. If that hits, then my anticipation for this, which is already high, is going to skyrocket all the more. So yeah, that's definitely a film that I think we're all collectively excited for. Here's the
100%.
one, Christian, where I was going to say maybe a little bit divisive. When the announcement dropped, I wasn't entirely sure. But given the discourse I have seen out there, I think we all collectively, whether
I was trying to figure out which one you were talking about. I think I know which one you're going with. But
regardless of where you sit on Rian Johnson, regardless of where you sit on Rise, I think we can all collectively, as Star Wars fans, agree that Rey was great. And Rise probably didn't give her the crystallization that she deserved. So to have her back, I think is very exciting. I am so excited for this new Rey movie, as she's supposedly going to be rebuilding the Jedi Order, whatever that looks like. I don't know about you. I think we're on the same page here. Most people seem to be very excited for this, because Rey truly is one of the best things about that sequel trilogy, if not the best thing about it. She's
100%.
not talked about enough, but I'm so glad that we're going to finally she's going to get her due finally.
She is. And that was something where, like, it was early in the morning when all that was happening.
Yeah.
I
like 8
actually
o'clock
forgot.
Eastern time.
Yeah, I actually forgot that it was happening all together. So I'm just sitting here like working, and then like my phone's blowing up, and I was like, Daisy Ridley's back. I've loved her ever since I saw Force Awakens in the theaters 3 times. And I could not get enough of that movie, and I still can't, because what she brought to Star Wars, along with John Boyega and of course Adam Driver, but like something about Daisy Ridley, I was like, wow, like she feel, and that was like her first movie, like big break, like ever when it came to Star Wars. I was like, I just immediately fell in love with her character, her mannerisms, just everything about her. And I'm so excited that we're getting more Rey, because I mean, the sequel trilogy didn't necessarily have a plan, but like you said, Rey definitely is one of those characters who carried the film or that franchise on her back, given, the script that she was given altogether. But I'm so happy to have her back. And, she took a hiatus from social media for a while, then she came back, and, we saw her, grace us with her presence on screen during, Star Wars Celebration this year. And I was like, welcome back. Like this, I want to welcome her back with open arms. And I know there's a lot of, naysayers out there, but we're not going to talk about those people, because she definitely brought something special to Star Wars. And I want to see her continue that journey, because she is a very important character. And I'm very, very excited to have her back.
Yeah. I want to provide a little bit of context here as to why I love Rey, and why ultimately I was disappointed with how that sequel trilogy ended, because it does help articulate why I'm so elated for Daisy Ridley and for Rey to be back, because I am one of the biggest defenders of The Force Awakens. I think it is arguably the second best Star Wars movie ever of all of them. I think it is great.
Well,
I know that's maybe a little hot takey, but
mine's pretty hot takey too. But
but here's why. Let me before people click off of this or they get angry at me and here come the comments, let me provide a little bit of context. What I love about The Force Awakens is that it is way more subversive than it gets credit for. People credit Rian Johnson for being subversive because it's Rian Johnson. I think they expect that in a lot of ways. And to that film's credit, at least mostly anyway, of course, a lot of people will discredit the film for being subversive. And I'm not wanting to get into a debate on that. But The Force Awakens is a film that I think is incredible in how it taps into mythos and memory, and which is a big part of Rey's arc in that film. And I love how it takes its central villain who wants to be Darth Vader, but he isn't anything. He's anything but Darth Vader. He's immature. He's a kid. He's childish through a lot of that film. He doesn't, like, aesthetically, he evokes intimidation like Darth Vader, but underneath, he doesn't have the prowess of Darth Vader. Then you have Han Solo. Who's Han Solo in the original trilogy? He's a jokester. He's a rebel. He's Han. He's got the cool factor. He's Han Solo. He's, I love you, I know, is his like that's how he's got that sarcastic touch to him. So where's that guy in The Force Awakens? That guy is nowhere to be found. Who is he in The Force Awakens? He's a father desperate to get his son back. That's who he is in that movie. And to me, it is emotionally exhilarating. It is easily one of the most rich emotional layers of anything in Star Wars. That's who Han Solo is in that film. And of course, you have General Leia, a part of all of that as well. That film, like, almost intentionally from a plotting standpoint, points back to a lot of the, original trilogy, in particular that first Star Wars film. So from a plotting standpoint, it's like, oh, look at this. Isn't this familiar? But then underneath, J.J. Abrams is very intentionally undermining everything that came before to do something new and invigorating. And that does not get talked about enough because it's J.J. Abrams. What do people want to talk about? Well, it's lens flares. It's the sun flare thing.
Yeah. It's,
or
really
whatever.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's the little J.J. Abrams isms of that film that I think distract people from what is actually there in terms of meat on the bone and in terms of this idea of subverting expectations or flipping the coin on the other side. That is what JJ does in that film. And I will defend it to death. I will die on that hill a bloody death.
I'm right there with you.
And I think it does it a little bit more seamless even than Rian Johnson's movie, which I also think is very good. Don't get me wrong. I do love his Star Wars movie and all of the hatred toward him. The vitriol is wholly unnecessary.
Oh, that was a rough time.
In fact, I'm one of the few that love both films with a deep passion. Like, I love Star Wars and I love The Force Awakens for all of its subversive qualities, and I love The Last Jedi for all of its subversive qualities. It might not do it quite as seamless for me, and it's a little bit more disjointed narratively, even if it's not a recreation of the first film, quote unquote, which again I think is a red herring. I don't think that's meant to invoke anything other than to be a facade for JJ to do all the subversive stuff he does in The Force Awakens. The narrative of The Last Jedi, I think on the whole is good. I think it's maybe a little messier at times, but they're both very, very, very good films. I love them. And I say all that to say that Rey's journey from The Force Awakens and even some of the ambiguity there, because here's the other thing. JJ gets a lot of crap for what happens in Rise, but he invokes that same ambiguity in The Force Awakens. He doesn't indicate in any sort of way that Rey is going to be a Skywalker or that she's going to be a Palpatine or whatever she ends up being. Her lineage in that film is uncertain. It is
I love his
ambiguous.
the mystery aspects.
Yes,
it's so much.
He is also toying with that idea that she is a nobody. He does not come out with any sort of clue. The only quote unquote clue we have is that she's in tune with the Force. But
Right.
that was always going to be a part of this sequel trilogy because it's Star Wars. So you're
Right.
going to have a Force user.
Exactly. Yeah. There was a point in time where I thought that the Force just willed itself into existence, almost like with Anakin, and just, created Rey. But yeah, no, I do agree. Like there's so much mystery. Like, oh, how did I think my gosh, Lupita Nyong'o's character, the orange alien, I'm
Yeah.
blanking on her name. How did she get a hold of Anakin's lightsaber? Like, how does it get from A to B?
Mhm.
And it's like there's so much with Force Awakens that I think JJ did such a great job with, and Ryan Johnson kind of took the baton with Rey kind of being a nobody, but then all that stuff happens. But regardless,
Maz
I'm very
Kanata is Lupita Nyong'o's character, by the way.
Okay. That's what it was. But yeah, I'm so happy to have her back. She looks thrilled to be back, and we need to be kinder to these characters playing in Star Wars, especially the guy who played Jar Jar Binks during the prequels, who almost took his own life.
It was fun to see his little cameo in The Mandalorian as well.
Yeah. So it's like I think just be kind when if you don't like it, that's fine. But like there's no reason to be rude or cynical about it. But I'm very excited.
I agree. And again, I say all of that to say I love what JJ does with The Force Awakens, with Rey, and setting up this potential ambiguity that maybe she isn't a nobody. That is very much established in that first film. The only thing that she has to go on, more than her lineage, actually, what I think is so brilliant about The Force Awakens, and again, this just isn't talked about enough, is that it's about this idea of legacy and memory as it relates to lore. Like when she's trapped in that thing where Kylo Ren is going to interrogate her, like she's heard stories about the Jedi, like, oh, they can use the Force, they can tap into people's minds. Like these are like, you hear all of these narratives and all of it.
Stories.
It's the bedtime stories that are now becoming true to her. So when she's stuck, she's like, I heard this so many times as a child. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's try it.
Let's try it and see what happens. Like, to me, that's what's fascinating. Now, we can debate the semantics of, oh, should she have been powerful enough to do that in that situation? Like, I don't care. I honestly don't care. That's all semantics to me, because the point of that scene is to reverberate that idea of the bedtime story, of these narratives that have been passed down for generations and for years about the Jedi and what they were capable of. And here is Rey using that to her advantage in that situation. So to me, that should be the talking point. I don't care about semantics.
Especially in a franchise where there's like essentially like a space Jesus, and people are just flipping about, and
and also I think what's great about that as well, and sorry to cut you off, but earlier we were talking about the obliviousness of Kylo Ren. He has this cool aesthetic and this awesome voice, but underneath he's a child still.
Yeah. And
here's a moment where, again, because of that is what's defining him in that film, Rey's able to escape essentially. And so I just love all that. That's ultimately what leads to him killing his father and him being so conflicted. So like Kylo Ren is such a fascinating character there as well. But anyway, I say all that to say Rey's arc in The Force Awakens is great. Her arc in The Last Jedi is also very good.
I love it. Yeah, good.
To me, it's Rise that becomes a problem. And it should be noted, it's a Disney problem. It's a Lucasfilm problem. It's like J.J. Abrams was a director for hire. He was not planning on coming back to that movie, but because of all of the off-production issues, if you will, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist or like, you don't have to do a ton of research to look back at the production hell of that film to realize that it was way out of JJ's hands. Like these directives were coming from people way above his pay grade that, hey, we have to tie him back to somebody. Let's make him a Palpatine.
Yeah, that's always been like the biggest criticism of Star Wars. It's like somebody is always related to somebody else, when it comes to
and look, it's not good. It's not great. I don't love it. And it is unfortunate because now what have we seen with even a lot of the Disney Plus shows, like The Mandalorian specifically, has that like the broader arc of that whole series so far is we have to find a way to clean up the mess of Rise.
That too, and
like, it's kind of silly.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that, for The Mandalorian, when it comes to just the, trying to, like, we keep talking about how, we're excited for Star Wars to kind of move away from the Skywalker saga, more or less. Obviously, Ahsoka is very tied into the Skywalker saga, but we haven't really seen Ahsoka's story explored on live action, so that's a little bit different. But I'll probably get sound off this in the comments, but I always say that, like, the worst thing that actually happened to the Mandalorian is that they introduced like Luke Skywalker, because that completely undercuts everything. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's Luke, and it's like, that's great, but like, I thought we were done with the Skywalker saga. Let's, as it comes to creating or exploring new characters like Din Djarin and more so Bo-Katan as well.
See, and that's interesting. Like, I'm one of the defenders of that decision because I think context matters. And given Luke and where he was at that time post Return of the Jedi, it made sense that he would seek out Grogu. Like, narratively, dramatically, character motive wise, like,
it was a great scene. Don't get me wrong. It was a great scene.
Like, it makes sense. It makes the most sense that it was Luke. If it was literally, it's one of those weird situations that if it was anybody else, because, for the points that you're making, we can't recreate Luke at that age unless we use CGI. Maybe we shouldn't do it. Or, we don't want to hire another actor to be Luke Hamill. Or, you know what? Let's just get away from Luke because the Luke story has played out. Let's do something else, and we'll have another character coming to get Grogu. Like, use whatever excuse you want. Right. If it's like just from a broad Star Wars lore perspective, if it's anyone else but Luke, it is incredibly contrived. It is manufactured. It makes no sense. It has to be Luke. Like, narratively, dramatically, it has to be Luke. So could they have handled it differently? Should they have hired someone else to just act as young Luke instead of doing the whole CGI nonsense? I mean, maybe we can talk about that. I think there's a debate to be had there, but to have Luke as the one seeking out Force users, because we know that's what he was doing at that time. Yeah, it makes sense. Him. It had to be him.
That is true.
I think they made the right call there. It's just an execution issue has been kind of the problem. And I think that's kind of been the case for anything Star Wars over the last 5 years or so, even going back to Rise, even Boba Fett, like, its ideas on paper, aside from the Palpatine thing, I just think that's wholly unforgivable. But
she was originally almost going to be related to Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm like, how is that? Because Obi-Wan's
I've heard that
probably
rumor
the only
too.
True Jedi that's never really, outside of Yoda, that's actually followed the way of the Jedi.
And here, this is another reason why I think The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi should be looked at as siblings and not rivalries.
Yeah,
because the potential ambiguity of Rey being a nobody in The Force Awakens is great, as we talked about. Then there's what seems now iconic scene in The Last Jedi between her and Kylo, where they have that conversation. You are a nobody. Though, like, that together is a perfect marriage. And then, of course, Rise undermines all of that. However, I will say this. I think this new Rey movie has an opportunity to retcon the retcon in the sense that, and maybe not fully retcon it, because look, it's Star Wars lore at this point now. She's a Palpatine, But what we can see from her, if they do talk about her lineage at all, they have an opportunity here for her to be like, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not defined by that. I'm
Right.
Ray something else. Like maybe she
Yeah,
comes up
it
with
can
a
spin
last
into
name
something
that,
else. Yeah.
you know, and then she truly becomes her own individual that isn't Palpatine. Like they have an opportunity for her to write her to talk about that and how she's not going to be defined by any of that at all. And
Right.
instead she's going to lean into the idea that, you know, she had parents that she doesn't know or understand. And now she's her own thing.
Yeah.
So, and I hope they do that. I kind of assume that's going to be the plan. At least we can hope that's
I
going
hope
to be the
so.
plan.
Yeah. Maybe some John Boyega action in there, but we'll see.
Man,
It
I
all
would
just
love for him to come back. It's always possible.
Yeah.
Because that was another criticism, right? Was, you know,
Should have been a Jedi.
the Finn and Rey relationship in The Force Awakens is awesome. And then the second two movies really get away from that in ways that is unfortunate.
Yeah, it
but-
happens.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, it is what it is at this point.
All right, well, we're going a little bit long here. We do have at least one more film to talk about. I don't know if we'll have as much time to get into the other little announcements that were made at Star Wars Celebration, but I do at least want to bring up the Dave Filoni film, the crystallization to the Mandalorian verse, the Mandoverse, if you will. What do you think about that? What do you expect to see from that film?
I don't know what to expect because this is Dave Filoni's first directorial debut as for like a Star Wars
For
film.
a feature film.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, it's been so long, you know, he is to me the godfather of Star Wars. Like him and Jon Favreau, I would say, because they really
Yeah.
know their stuff and, you know, bounce ideas off each other. But I guess this is supposed to, like I guess end the Mandoverse and somewhat tie all of the films and shows together from what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what to
Yeah.
expect, but
don't-
I mean,
yeah.
give me some Dave Filoni, you know, throw in some Bryce Dallas Howard. We'll be all good to go. I'm all good for it. Like I'm very excited. I don't know what it's gonna be, but I know it's gonna be something special, especially with it being
Yeah.
his first like feature film directorial debut for Star Wars.
Bryce Dallas Howard. Now that's a name that needs her own movie.
Yes,
She
she
has
does. Give her a movie.
earned
Disney,
that
please.
She has directed some of the best Star Wars anything on Disney Plus. I would love to see a full feature in her hands.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's going to have any sort of part in this Dave Filoni film. Maybe it'll be co-directed. Who knows? That would be fun.
Well, yeah, I don't know what it's gonna. I don't know what. Yeah, outside of the Mandoverse, I'm all for it. Like anything Dave Filoni with Star Wars,
Yeah.
I'm like, say no more. Just give it to me. I'm good.
But I'm also a little bit confounded as to what it all means. Perhaps they have gone on to articulate it further, and I just haven't found the reading yet. It was a busy weekend.
Yeah.
After all, for a lot of us over the weekend. But what does, you know, crystallizing the Mandoverse mean? So the Mandalorian, obviously you got Jin, and I assume the rest of, I imagine the rest of the Mandalorians and wherever that's gonna take us here as this last season kind of finishes out, or you know, and whatnot. You know, does that mean Boba Fett is coming back into this as well? Like, is that all a part of this? How is Boba Fett gonna play into it? Ahsoka, I assume, is going to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, in some way, shape, or form. I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of just all up in the air. Like, even though it's called, you know, the Mandalorian, like I feel like that does speak more to than just Din Djarin, where you know if you have been watching season 3, you know they're trying to, you know, resurrects essentially, you know, Mandalore, find its new leader and whatnot, and band together.
It could be the Mandalorian. Really could mean anybody.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be Bo-Katan. It could be Din Djarin. It could be Grogu. Hell, you know, because he's on his way to being a Mandalorian, as we found out. So, like, I don't like. It really could refer to anybody. I mean. even Boba Fett. So I guess I assume that they're all going to be involved in some sort of way, and that Ahsoka will, because we've seen Ahsoka interact with Din anyway.
Mhm.
So, I assume she's going to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form, as
Right.
well as the whatever we're leading toward with Mandalore and perhaps some sort of civil war or them reclaiming Mandalore, whatever that's going to look like.
Very excited.
Yeah, I
it.
imagine that will lead to them coming into conflict with. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's no information.
It's hard to say, but it's
and we
fun at
don't
the
know
same
where
time.
this last season's going to lead quite yet. So.
Exactly, because this what I think what makes Star Wars so special is that it's not it was crystallized or as a film franchise. So it's not like you're reading like the Hunger Games books or Harry Potter books. Like, oh, like I know where this story's going. We don't know,
Yeah.
and I'm honestly okay with that 100%.
Yeah.
That we're able to just be fans and just watch it unfold when it happens, because I feel like that's probably the best part of watching like one of your favorite franchises when it comes to something like that. It's like, hey, we know who's involved and what it's kind of sort of about, but I'm excited to see where it leads.
And the other thing too with it, and I fully trust Dave Filoni. So I don't say this as someone who is dubious at all regarding his way of telling a story, and especially with these characters, because if the Rebels characters are going to be involved, if Ahsoka is going to be involved, and obviously he's been a big part of the Mandalorian show this whole time, so he knows these characters well. I assume he has a vision for where it all wants to go, and I am excited for that. I trust him in that way. The one thing that makes me maybe a little bit nervous is if this is a movie that is going to be wrapping up all of these shows simultaneously, is it going to function like a movie or like the end of a TV show? Because you think about, for anyone that watches The Bad Batch, this last season, it ended on 2 episodes, right? You put those together, it's a movie. It's about 90 minutes, those 2 episodes.
I never watched past like the first third episode of season 1 of The Bad Batch. I just haven't gotten into it yet, but
I think it's
will
good.
Eventually.
I think Bad Batch is actually really good.
Oh, okay.
I think it's great. Yeah, no, I love it, and I don't know if it's I don't know if it's because of the kind of pseudo father themes it has or what, but I do really quite like it. I think it's underrated Star Wars. At any rate, this last season ended with 2 episodes that came out the same day, back to back. And it finished out that storyline this last season, the overarching nature of it. It did it really well in 2 episodes that, again, if you played them back to back, function like a short film. But it obviously was crystallizing that entire season's run of storylines and character arcs and things of that nature. So will this Dave Filoni movie function more like that? Will it feel like that? Or will it be a movie? Because I do think those two things are not the same. You can have,
I agree.
You can have 90 minutes or 2 hours of content, but that doesn't mean it functions great as a film. You know what I mean? Especially when you're crystallizing, previous story arcs that came on TV shows. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's, because the pacing for a TV show is so different from that of a movie, and how you wrap up a season of television versus how you wrap up a movie, depending if it's just like a standalone Star Wars movie. Everything has to be essentially resolved at the end of that movie. If it's a television show, for a season, you're answering questions that you had during the beginning of the season, but then towards the end of the season, you're left with more questions that is purposely essentially left for a cliffhanger. Like, it's like, oh, tune in for the next season to find out more. So not all of your questions are going to be answered with the television show. So
yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure. I
That's
guess
only my question. It's just a
yeah.
small question, but it's one that lingers for me.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
As we wrap up here, we don't really have a lot of time to go into some of the other announcements. I know Kathleen Kennedy talked about The Acolyte. They talked a little about Skeleton Crew. They noted that the Lando Calrissian series is still happening. She noted that even Rogue Squadron, which was squashed a few months ago, that it's not in production anymore. But she also noted it could still happen. It's not impossible. So, of all of the other news items, is there anything that stands out? Anything you want to note here real fast before we get out of here?
Acolyte was kind of interesting, but honestly, a lot of the other stuff, like you said, they're more of like B/C stories. Nothing as of late. Pretty much everything, like the big stuff, is what I really wanted to talk about, which I feel like we've gone deep in depth with for sure. But no, I think I'm all good to go. I'm just, I know Kathleen Kennedy I haven't agreed with all of her decisions, but she's not like the worst. But it's like, it is what it is. And I think Star Wars is still in good hands. I mean, God knows what other studio might be doing with it. Like, it seems that Disney really wants to, expand the universe and create these new characters for, the OG or the original or prequel babies like myself can, pass on to when we start families and, they can have more characters that they can relate to, especially with Rey. And that was very special to have a female-like character in Star Wars. Not saying that, we haven't had great ones before, but, for the big screen, it's like, hey, there's a lot of, young girls out there or little girls out there who love dressing up as Rey for like Halloween or like these big events and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the future of Star Wars, as I was, ever since Disney picked up the property. Like, there's been a lot of great stuff, some not so great, but I think the pros outweigh the cons.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's what's interesting about something like The Acolyte. A title, when we say that, a lot of you are like, the what? And understandable. It hasn't been quite as marketed. But here's what's fascinating about something like The Acolyte for those that are uninitiated. This is going to take place approximately 100 years before the events of The Phantom Menace. This is a time period, like the Old Republic, that we have not experienced yet. So this is new Star Wars. This is a new era that we haven't seen, and they're calling this era the High Republic. So this is, the Republic as we see it in that prequel trilogy. This is the height of it, in many respects, anyway. And this is going to follow a Jedi Master who reunites with a former Padawan, and it's basically them, trying to solve like these crimes. It's going to be like a crime mystery thriller. Like, that to me sounds exciting, in the world of Star Wars and in an era that we just haven't seen before. So that to me is exciting. Like, it's the name won't evoke much. People might be confused. What is this? But it's going to be new. People have been clamoring for new Star Wars for eras we haven't seen before. This is that. So if you are one of those that are wanting this and then you don't watch this, I don't know what else to say. Like, Disney is pandering to that criticism. So
literally, yeah.
The Acolyte, that's coming out on Disney Plus next year. And then the last one I want to note here, although Skeleton Crew sounds exciting, I'm all in on Skeleton Crew. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But the last one I do want to note here is Rogue Squadron, because longtime listeners of our show will know that I grew up in a household where my uncle, who I was somewhat close to when I was younger, was an Air Force pilot. So I grew up wanting to be an Air Force pilot, and that coming out of high school, that's what I was going to do. And then, they won't allow you into the military if you have asthma, it turns out. So I was screwed.
Very true. Yeah. I have asthma as well.
You know,
so
maybe their restrictions are not quite as harsh now as they were then. I don't know, but I couldn't get into any branch of the military, let alone fly jets. But that was the dream when I was, 11, 12, 13 years old. That's what I wanted to do. So I know like the history of aviation and especially dogfighting and military piloting is something that is a part of, it was a big part of my childhood. It's a lot of what defines me even now. So Rogue Squadron is a film or TV series, whatever it's going to be, that was very tailor-made to my sensibilities as someone who loves dogfighting, or at least has an admiration for it, or respect for it. And I was disappointed when they said that they were not going to do that movie. So, but the idea that it's still possible is something that I don't know if Kathleen Kennedy is giving me false hope when she says that, and maybe she is, but I'm going to cling on to whatever hope I can, because I would really love to see that. And I think there's something ripe for Star Wars, for there to be a series or a film about these pilots, because you think about some of the most classic iconography when it comes to Star Wars, and it's the trench run. It's, what we see in Rogue One. It's these pilots getting into these dogfights and doing something like it's some of the best things we see about the prequel trilogy, even. Or again, earlier we talked about The Force Awakens, that whole sequence, that one take shot of Poe Dameron flying around in circles and destroying dudes left and right as Finn looks up and like cheers him on. Like that, to me, like that's one of those moments in that film where I stood up and was like clapping at the film at that point. Like, yes, more of that, please. Yeah. So like, I think there's potential for Star Wars to really do something with the dogfighting and with something like Rogue Squadron. So I would love to see it. I hope it happens. But
for sure.
At any rate, Star Wars Celebration 2023. Let us know if you have any sort of thoughts, if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here about any of the announcements, the trailer for Ahsoka. We would love to know what you have to think as well. And again, I just want to thank our patrons. You're a big reason that we're able to keep doing this each and every month. You guys mean the world to us. So thank you to our lovely patrons. We hope that you enjoy this little bonus content episode. If you're listening to this after it's been released, you can sign up at patreon.com/InSessionFilm for as low as $1 a month. It really helps out the show, and we would greatly appreciate it. Of course, be sure to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Same thing on Apple or Spotify. Be sure to check us out. Christian, thanks for being here, man. Really do appreciate you.
Thank you for having me so much. This was a lot of fun, and I'm just excited for the future of Star Wars.
I'm excited for the future of Star Wars as well. I'm very pro Rey. I think she's one of the best Star Wars characters. That theme by John Williams, by the way, like so he's good. Already conjured some of the most iconic film scores, musical cues, just in the Star Wars universe alone. And then in 2015, that film comes out and he's like, I got the magic still, guys. This Rey theme is still going to be one of the best themes in all of Star Wars.
I got the vinyl in my closet right now.
Yeah.
So good.
Unbelievable. Daisy Ridley is incredible. Like, we didn't talk about her performance as much earlier. She's really good in all of those movies. Say what you will about them. Her performance truly great.
Yeah. It's like, you can't help but root for her.
Oh, yeah.
And like, just, you go find who you are. And, no matter what it is, just be true to yourself.
Exactly. Definitely pro Rey. Can't wait for Ahsoka. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there's going to be some really great Star Wars content coming down the pipeline here very soon. At any rate, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you all next time on the In Session Film Podcast. Give me Rogue Squadron, please. I want it.